All right, everyone. So it's 1 p.m. on the East Coast, and as always, we'll go ahead and start our call on time. Everyone's now on mute, but when the time comes for questions or comments, I'll tell you how to request unmuting so that we can unmute you. My name's Azer Cole, Citizen Empowerment Coordinator here at American Promise, and welcome to another American Promise Citizen Uprising National Call, a call that happens on the second Saturday of each month. And I just want to thank all of you who have taken the time out of your busy weekends to join us today. Or maybe you couldn't make it and are listening to this recording afterwards, but either way, you're stepping up to save our democracy, so a big thank you to all of you. We're honored to have an incredible guest speaker here with us today. Ben Cohen, co-founder of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream and democracy activist, is here with us today, and after we hear from Ben, we'll discuss key points for having an impact with their members of Congress during August recess. We'll also review our next steps to advance the Democracy for All Amendment in the Senate. We've been so inspired to see folks stepping up all across the country to start new American Promise Associations, or APAs as we like to call them, and I want to start by sharing this quote I read this week from former Vice President Al Gore. Quote, "Social media won't save us. We won't click climate change away. The answer is low-tech, old-fashioned, human." End of quote. Let me quickly repeat that. Social media won't save us. We won't click climate change away. The answer is low-tech, old-fashioned, human. I believe the same is true for saving our democracy. Social media won't save us. We won't click money's corrupting political influence away. The answer is low-tech, old-fashioned, human. What this means is the answer is you. And that's why I've been so inspired about all the new APAs that have been getting in action and setting up meetings with their members of Congress. This is the type of action that will really cause the big breakthrough in the 28th Amendment movement, and it's happening all across the country. So thanks to everyone on the call who has already started an APA or is currently in the process of starting one. Since the call last month, we've launched 2 new APAs in New Jersey and 1 in Naperville, Illinois. Welcome to those new groups, and if you're interested in starting a new APA, send me an email at azerc@americanpromise.net. That's azorc@americanpromise.net. I'm now excited to introduce our wonderful guest speaker, Ben Cohen. Ben's the co-founder of Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream and the head stamper at the Stamp Stampede, a national movement of over 75,000 people who are legally rubber stamping messages on paper currency to demonstrate mass sustained support and demand for the 28th Amendment so that people, not money, govern. Ben's Stamp Stampede has partnered up with American Promise to build support for the 28th Amendment across the country, and we could not be more thankful for this great partnership. Ben, before I kick it over to you, let me first introduce you to the kind of people on this call. You're talking to people like Shoshana in South Jersey, whose great group Allied for Action just recently launched a new American Promise Association, and within weeks of launching, they already have a meeting set up with their Republican member of Congress, Frank Lobiondo. APAs around the country have taken on the challenge of bringing Republicans on board. People like Shoshana and her team are the kind of people you're talking here to today. So without further ado, Mr. Ben Cohen. Hey Ben, how are you doing?
It's really good. It's actually a beautiful day up here in Vermont. It's been pretty rainy this summer, but you know, I'm happy and I'm really glad to be on the call with the American Promise members. You know, you guys are rocking. It's amazing what a shot in the arm for the movement American Promise has been. And as you all know, due to a lot of work by a whole bunch of you, we are now, for the first time, halfway to the number of states required to get this amendment. That's an amazing accomplishment. And I'm just I'm just in awe of the work that you guys have been doing, and it's so good to be working together. You know, in terms of hip, sexy things to do, getting money out of politics probably is not one of them. You know, the environment is hipper and cooler, education, healthcare, any of those things. But the reality is that we're never going to accomplish the healthcare reform that we need, the student loan help that we need, the environmental stuff we need, the energy stuff that we need, until we can get money out of politics. And it was Thoreau who said that there's 1,000 people hacking at the branches of evil for every one who's hacking at the root. And so it is us, the people on this call, that are doing that hard work and important work of hacking at the root. I'm always also inspired by Margaret Mead's quote that never doubt that a small group of committed individuals can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And, I think about that, and I think about, where is that small group of people? And the fact of the matter is that we look around, and it turns out that we are the people that we've been waiting for. So, the stampede was started so that anybody, anywhere, can make their voice heard. That's what we were looking for, was a way for anybody, anywhere, to weigh in on this issue. And we came up with this tactic of turning money into media, decorating dollars, beautifying our bucks. And it is a protest and against the current system, and a demonstration of support for the 28th Amendment. The reality is that money is kind of the original viral marketing. It moves from hand to hand. And as we heard at the beginning of the call, it's not clicking that's going to save us. And this is physical, it's real world, and the reality is that once you stamp a bill, it stays in circulation for over 2.5 years. And as it gets passed from hand to hand, 875 people see each bill. If you start doing a little math, you realize that if you were to stamp just 3 bills a day for a year, you would reach 1 million people. It's kind of unbelievable, but it's true. And, protests are important, demonstrations are important, but they tend to be one-off activities that, make an impression on a particular day, and then, the news moves on to something else. But the beauty of the stampede and stamping bills as a way of making our voice heard is that it's lasting. So we see the stampede as a way to build the movement, and as a way to get new people into the movement, and as a way to prepare the ground for this amendment. Because the name of the game in advertising is repetition. The more times you see something, the more real it becomes, and this is part of that. But setting up these meetings, doing these in-person meetings with your representatives is really the most powerful thing that you can do. So when you're not doing that, you can't do it that many times. When you're not doing it, and when you're just hanging out at home thinking, what else can I do? What do? You get out your stamp and join the over 75,000 people that are currently stamping their money out of politics and essentially planting seeds. Because you guys are so instrumental in this movement, and because you're doing those in-person meetings, we want to make an incredible deal to you guys here at the Stampede, because we love American Promise. We especially love those of you that are going to go visit your Congress people. And so I want to give you my personal discount code, BC25. BC25. Now, you might think that the discount code BC25 gets you 25% off, but no. It actually gets you 50% off your stamp if you go to stampstampede.org. And we hope you will. And we're just very, very psyched to be in this together, working with American Promise, because what we need is people on the ground talking to their neighbors, talking to their Congress people. So if you got any questions, I'd like to open it up and be happy to talk with you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben. Fantastic hearing from you. So as you said, let's open it up for some questions. If you have a question, please hit 1 on your keypad so we can call on you for your question for Ben Cohen. My colleague Brian Muldoon is doing the tech for this call. Thank you, Brian. Brian, does anyone have a question right now?
Yes. Let's go with Shell Keitel. I'm going to make you public right now, Shell.
Keitel.
All right, Cheryl. Where are you calling in from?
It's Shell Keitel, Keitel. I'm calling from Battle Creek, Michigan, and I have a question. I'm looking at the list. I guess this is a list of participants, and I don't see my name on the list, but I guess it doesn't matter because we're talking. So a question I would like to ask of Ben is, I've been stamping now for about 6 months, but the problem is my only source of income is Social Security. I don't see that many bills to stamp, but an idea that I just got listening here so far is that every $20 bill I get, I'm going to cash them in for ones, and I'm going to stamp 20 bills instead of one. My question for Ben is, what has the experience been with actually being able to sign in to the Internet using your code to track bills that you distributed, and also I'm not seeing any other bills that have been stamped by other people. So could you just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We just started Stampede 2.0. We launched a new website on July 17th, and as part of that, when you get a new stamp, it contains your own unique 4-digit or 4-character ID code, and there's a legend on stamped right on the bill that says, "If you find this, let me know." And
right.
So people are finding these bills and going online and filling out this report form, and when they find the bill, you end up getting, the stamper, end up getting an email in real time that the bill that you stamped in Battle Creek was now found in St. Louis. And it's a lot of fun. And there's a leaderboard, so you can track, so there's kind of a friendly competition between us stampers. Definitely the idea is to stamp lower denominations, 1s and 5s. Those are the ones that circulate most frequently, and those are the ones that run into the least problem with being pulled out of circulation by overzealous bank tellers or scanning machinery. But people are finding them more and more. I find that when I go to the bank and ask to take out get $100 or $200 worth of $1 bills. Oftentimes there is a stamped $1 bill there, so that makes me pretty happy.
Great. Brian, do we have anyone else raising their hand to ask a question?
Yep, let's go with Kathleen Rutkowski.
Great. Kathleen,
Yeah.
Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Toledo, Ohio, and I am very new to this. I got my first email inviting me to this call, and where can I get a lot more information and a stamp?
Well,
Fantastic.
The stamp you
Go
can
ahead,
get
Ben.
at stampstampede.org. Stampstampede.org is where you can get a stamp. Don't forget to use the discount code BC25. And there's a bunch of information there about the Stampede and a little about the movement in general. But I think on the American Promise website, you'll find out a lot more about on-the-ground organizing.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Kathleen. Brian, does anyone else have their hand up?
Yep, let's go with Coralla Arellano.
All right. And where are you calling in from?
Coralla, you there? All right, let's move on to somebody else.
All right. Who else has their hand up?
Let's go with Susan Cohen.
Hi, this is Susan Cohen in Piermont, New York. And so the East Coast heard of. I just want to thank you all. I'm just so glad I came across this and to be a part of the call, because we're always trying to figure out how to make a difference, and it is person to person and bill to bill, and just thank you so much. Just, I just had to say that. You've revived me.
Well, it's great to be working together.
Yep, that's it. That's it. So I can't wait to get started and have that bill come back to me, because it's just so important that we are in this together. And again, the money is such a huge problem. I'm a big environmentalist, and I've gone to Albany, against fracking, but boy, until we get the money out of the politics, it's just, So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you might take some stamped dollar bills and leave them with the congressional people that you're meeting with.
Yes,
they'll
exactly.
Remember,
Nita
they'll
Lowy
remember that.
and yeah. I love it. That's great. No, but we got to have fun with this too. We really do. Because it's
really
tough
important
out there now. Yeah.
I keep thinking of the Emma Goldman's quote, who said, "If I can't dance, I don't want to be part of your revolution." So
dancing, singing. Yes, there's not enough singing and dancing. I know.
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much for your question, Susan. Brian, I see we've got a lot of hands up. Who else has a question?
Let's go. They just signed in as Anne. Anne, you are now live.
All right, Anne, where are you calling in from?
Oh, I'm calling in from Nacogdoches, Texas.
Wonderful.
And I just wanted to add to this conversation that I find I stamp many, many, many bills, but it's very rare that I get the email back that somebody has found the bill. And it's still quite novel and very exciting when that happens. So I don't want people to be discouraged that there's not a lot of email feedback, because it seems like the return rate is kind of low. That's my experience, at least.
Yeah, there's a very small percentage of people who see these bills and find them who actually make the effort to go online and report it. We don't have any good hard data there, but we think that it's about 1% of the people who see the bills who actually go online and report it. Originally we had two different messages that went on the bill. One was for tracking and info, stmpr.me/your 4-letter code, and the other one is, if you find this, let me know, stmpr.me/your 4-letter code. And And we found that if you find this, let me know, it gets reported a whole lot more than the other one. So now all the stamps have that on it, and I don't know which one you have, but if you have the other one, get if you find this, let me know, and your report rate will pick up. Also the other thing is that there is some stamps on the website called Guru stamps, after the guy who developed them. That's his 4-digit code, and they're not self-inking, but they're set up in such a way that the ask to report the bill is a lot more prominent, and those get reported more frequently as well.
Great. Brian, do we have anyone else who has their hand up to ask a question?
Yep, let's go with Paul Harton.
Great. Paul, where are you calling in from? Paul, are you there? All right, let's move on, Brian. Does anyone else have a question?
Let's go with
Helen?
H. Kelly.
Yes,
Helen
please.
Kelly.
Yes. First of all, thank you to everyone who is involved in this. I'm from the East Bay of San Francisco, California, and
Fantastic.
The stamping has a domino effect. We have to look at how powerful this is, and that is trying to remove the political controls from contributions of money. And I and others who are on this line right now have been fighting a massive corruption in our government and the refusal to prosecute corrupt banks. And the perfect example is One West Bank, chaired and founded by Stephen Mnuchin. And who is Stephen Mnuchin? He is now the United States Secretary of the Treasury. The Department of Justice refused to prosecute him and his gang with respect to numerous violations of laws that constitutes racketeering. And a book called Chicken Shit Club, just written by a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, describes how the Department of Justice let us down. And the key reason is because of political contributions controlling whether or not our laws even get enforced. So we have lost millions of homes. People are homeless because of the corruption of political contributions. Millions of middle-class people have lost everything because the Department of Justice would not prosecute people like Stephen Mnuchin, who now floated up to being the United States Secretary of the Treasury. And his cohort, his chairman who chaired the bank after he left, is Joseph Otting, who is the comptroller of the currency. So that's the corruption of the political contributions. God bless all of you. We're going to get our country back by all these efforts. And thank you very much, Mr. Cohen, for your leadership, because this is the time to fix our broken democracy.
Well, thank you for doing all the hard work.
Great. Ben, do we have time for 2 or 3 more questions?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Great. Brian, does anyone else have their hand up?
Yep, let's go with Alan Richardson. You're now live, Alan.
Great, Alan.
Hi.
Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from Tarpon Springs, Florida, and
Great.
I have a question. I have a technical question. Also, I'll ask that later. You can call me back later offline. You have my number, and it has to do with why I can't seem to get into the visual interface with an iPad or iPhone. But the other thing is, if you put a stamped bill into an ATM to deposit it, does it kick out? Does it get retained and nullified as being supposedly counterfeit?
We did a whole lot of research and studies, and essentially went to a whole lot of ATMs and bill acceptors at department stores and supermarkets, and finally after many months and many tabulations, the conclusion we were left with was that you cannot predict which automatic machinery is going to accept a bill and which is going to reject it. We get a lot of reports of people getting money back out, stamped money out of ATMs, but in my own experience and the experience of others, I find maybe about 50% of automatic bill acceptors accept them, and 50% don't. That's the best I can tell you. We tried really hard to come up with something more definitive, but that's about all we got.
So I guess you don't want to stamp every bill if you're going to deposit it at an ATM, but if you're going to give it to the teller bank, you can inform the teller that the law allows it.
Yes, absolutely. It definitely does. So many of us were brought up hearing that it's illegal to deface currency, but the reality is that when you read the actual law, what they prohibit doing is cutting it, punching holes in it, gluing it, making it so that it no longer is obviously money, changing the denomination, and you cannot advertise your business on it. But aside from that, it's legal.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Brian, does anyone have their hand still raised?
Yep, let's go with Melissa Murphy.
All right, Melissa, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Laramie, Wyoming, but I'm sorry, I didn't intend to raise my hand. I apologize.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Boy,
it's
so great to see that the entire country is represented on the call, coast to coast, north to south.
Absolutely. Brian, do we have anyone else raising their hand? Yep.
Yeah, let's go with Barbara Woodall.
All right, Barbara, where are you calling in from?
Hi, I'm calling in from Chevy Chase, Maryland. And I just wanted to know if you could get a stamp that does not have the 4-digit number, that if you would prefer not to get emails. Is there just a plain stamper without any identifier on it?
Yes, you can do that. You could also opt out from emails. But yes, it is possible to get a stamp without a unique code on it.
Can I figure that out just looking at the website?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You bet.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for the great questions and the lively discussion. And Ben, special thanks again for joining us today and for your partnership and leadership in this historic effort to reclaim our democracy. I know you've got to go, and thanks again for being with us. I just wanted to give you, one last chance if there's anything else you'd like to say before you hop off.
Well, I'm looking forward to continuing to work together really closely with American Promise members, and I'm looking forward to the big convening in 2018.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ben.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you, everybody.
Take care. All right. We're soon going to discuss key tactics for approaching our elected officials during August recess, but first I want to hear from Vicki Barnes, our amazing APA leader in St. Paul, Minnesota, who we just had the pleasure of seeing at the Democracy Convention 2 weeks ago in Minnesota. Hey, Vicki, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hey, Azer.
Hey, Vicki, how are you doing?
I'm good.
All right, and what are you going to share with us today?
Well, I just wanted to talk about meeting one of our group members set up a meeting with his Republican congressperson to discuss the amendment movement. And so before we went to that, I did some research and refreshed what Sam Daly Harris had taught us and the Congressman Raskin and McGovern, so we'd be prepared. I did some research on Congressman Paulson, who was the constituent's congressman, and found out what kind of legislation he'd worked on and what his background was. So when I met him, I was able to thank him for his work combating sex trafficking. Said he must have been very proud of that bill, and he just beamed. He was thrilled with that compliment. He said it was a real high point for him. So I basically printed out a copy of the HJR 48 and 31 along with the co-sponsors, so he could see who had co-sponsored it, because the question was, why are Republicans not joining on as co-sponsors? So I placed those in front of him, and I said, he said, of course, I expected him to, that he's not a lawyer. He was a math major, so he wouldn't be able to give a decision as to whether or not it'd be something he supported. But I asked if he saw any reason why he wouldn't, and he said the fact that all the Democrats had co-sponsored. So I expected that, and it was good to have that honesty from him. So I explained, what we were working on, and asked him how the Citizens United ruling had affected him. And he started in 2010, so he didn't have a history of prior to that ruling. But he said he really didn't care for the negative ads that super PACs run. However, that can work to his advantage too. So there's not really much to complain about. He said he wouldn't mind a limit on the amount of time that the campaign season went on for. And I said, of course, that we can't pass any limits like that without the taking speech rights away from those groups. And told him a little bit about what we're doing in Minnesota, trying to get a resolution passed calling for the amendment, and what American Promise is doing with writing an amendment. And I asked him if he saw any way he could get on board with that, and he said that if the Minnesota State Legislature passes a resolution, that he would back that. We did bring up that he's got a history of working across the aisle, so we did manage to get that in. I thanked him for the passage on his bill, and told him about the 19 states that have passed it, and 18 states currently having the bill resolutions in their legislatures, and that this will pass eventually. And I managed to drain the swamp reference, and as I left, I said that, even though he felt great success about his work on combating sex trafficking, to pass an amendment that would give the country back to its people and secure a better future for his children and grandchildren would leave a legacy of historical proportions. So all in all, I think it went well. I didn't expect him to jump up and say, by golly, I support that. But I feel like anytime you have a conversation with someone, even if you don't leave with their support, the next time that comes across their desk, it won't be the first time. And the constituent, my group member, said that he will arrange for another meeting next year once we have a written amendment through American Promise to be more specific about, and hopefully we can get the resolution passed in Minnesota. But then also, basically, we'll be left with the business card of his judicial advisor. So I did email the judicial guy and haven't heard back from him much. I didn't really expect to, but we do have a follow-up capability, and I think it really kind of went as good as we could hope it would.
Fantastic. That's wonderful, Vicki. And I just want to thank you so much for sharing this experience. You're a real inspiration, and keep up the fantastic work.
Thanks.
All right, we're now going to transition to our training on having an impact with our members of Congress during August recess. So Congress is currently on recess from now until September 5th. And last month we gave you a heads up on the August recess and a brief training on how to be effective at town hall meetings. We're going to do a brief review of that training, but first let me ask if any of the people or APAs on this call have been in action about August town hall meetings. That might mean that you've been to one in the past 2 weeks or that you're still planning to go. So I'd like you to press 1 on your keypad if you'd like to share your experience with or plans to participate in a town hall meeting. So go ahead, press 1, and I'll ask Brian if anyone wants to share. Brian, do we have anyone who's pressed 1 on their keypad? Brian, has anyone pressed 1 on their keypad to share their experience with the town hall meeting?
Apologies for that. I muted myself so you couldn't hear what I was saying. There are a few people. Some of them might be left over from wanting to ask questions from Ben Cohen. So how about people press 2 on their keypad so we can see if they want to do it?
Okay.
Let's try that.
Yeah, so if anyone who wants to share, it looks like we've got somebody. Brian, who is pressed 2 on their keypad?
Alice Angel, and she is now.
All right, Alice. Where are you calling from?
As we're calling from Vail, North Carolina, and yes, we do plan to go to a town hall meeting.
Patrick McHenry.
With Patrick McHenry, North Carolina, 10th District.
So you said that you are planning to go to the town hall meeting?
Yes.
Great. All right. Part of the second part of this call is going to be reviewing, best practices for having effective town hall meetings. So thank you for being here with us today. And Brian, has anyone else pressed 2 on their keypad?
Yep, it looks like Helen Kelly has again. Helen, you there?
Yes, I am. I just want to share some experiences. Not with respect to specifically your issue, but with respect to the criminal activity of One West Bank and Stephen Mnuchin, our Secretary of Treasury. I have gone to a number of town hall meetings and listened to my congressman talk about having just flown in on Air Force One with President Obama. And I gave him a package of materials with a summary memo in a fancy folder and handed to him and told him that I had a proposal that would have him leave this concept, this issue, smelling like a rose. Now, he instead responded by saying no one can smell like a rose in prosecuting this bank and Mnuchin, who's now the Secretary of the Treasury. Even though there are clear criminal violations. So I recommend, in case you get identified for not being called on at a town hall meeting, that you have a simple handout and contact information for every person in attendance at that town hall meeting so they can get in touch with you and they could be introduced to the subject regardless of whether or not you get called on by the congressman.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that useful information, and thanks for being engaged and going to your town hall meetings for these important causes. Brian, do we have anyone else who's pressed 2 on their keypad to share their experience at their town hall meeting?
We have Dana Ezekiel Clark.
All right, Dana, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from from Venice, California. And actually, I do apologize because, again, like my previous caller, I didn't actually attend the town hall meeting, but I am sitting now and listening to you for the first time to this, and I am part of a couple of indivisible groups, and we go and meet our representatives quite a lot, and I am so excited about the idea of bringing this whole operation into Indivisible and joining efforts, not only meeting representatives about all the issues, immigration and all that. Citizens United just never comes up, and I just wanted to congratulate you for doing this and wanted to just tell you that I'm going to make sure that my group, I have several groups I'm connected with. We write postcards to voters, we do phone banks, we do all this other stuff that's issue-based, that's national and California, that's state-based, and this Citizens United getting money out of politics, just everyone feels powerless about it. So this is absolutely wonderful. I'm going to order a shitload of stamps and get going with my friends. Sorry to not answer the actual question you were asking for. But
that's okay. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you'd like to email me directly, my email is azorc@americanpromise.net, and we can absolutely talk more about how you can get involved specifically on money and politics issues and overturning Citizens United. Brian, I think we've got time for one more question. I see Ishwari's had her hand up for a while now. Can we call on Ishwari?
Yeah, she was next on the list.
Great.
Hi. Actually, it's my phone. This is Ishwari, but Eric Wolf has something to share about a meeting with one of our representatives, Heinrich.
Oh, fantastic.
Our small group met with Senator Heinrich's office, and this is in the state of New Mexico. And I think we were given some helpful information from his office staff, and that is they are looking for specific personal stories at this time about how healthcare, our country's failure to provide healthcare adequately to people, has interfered with people's ability to get good healthcare. And they want specific individual stories that can help them promote the idea that big money in politics is making it impossible for many Americans to get good health care. This might be helpful for people visiting other senators and representatives.
Great. Thank you, guys. And just to so we can share with the rest, you guys are calling from a recently formed APA in New Mexico, correct?
We're actually an affiliate. Our organization is called New Mexicans for Money Out of Politics, and Ben Gubitz came out and did a training in April, and then we did some follow-up trainings via Skype. But the 28th Amendment is one of the issues that our organization is addressing, and so we have 4 people in the room right now on this call.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much for calling in, and thanks for all being in the same room, one caller with 4 people. That's just phenomenal. So
sure. Just before we go, I wanted to mention that we had like 5 subcommittees developed here, and we've actually had meetings or contact with each of our federal or national Congress people, except Congressman Pierce. But we didn't meet with the actual Congress people, but with their staffers, and we've actually had some successful connections. So we're working on trying to continue to build those relationships, and we really value what you all are doing and how you're helping us to learn how to do this.
Incredible. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much for your work, and thanks for sharing your successes. I'd like now to move on and go into just some tips on having good impact at your town hall meetings. So don't go alone. Identify a group of others who will not only go together, but get together and practice beforehand. Go to the website of your U.S. representative and senators and subscribe to their newsletters via email. You can call your local office and ask when you might have a chance to hear your elected officials speak while they're in district in August. Get together to plan your trip to the town hall. Research your members of Congress. Visit their websites to learn more about their votes, background, interest, and areas of expertise. You can Google HJRES 48 co-sponsors and or HJRES 31 co-sponsors to find out if your member of Congress is already a co-sponsor. And make your questions concise, but begin with thanking them for something, even if it's just for holding this town hall meeting. Make sure your question has a yes or no answer, just so you don't leave room for them to wiggle out of answering. And practice asking these questions. It's important to arrive early. Someone from your group might arrive early enough to assess the procedure, see if there's a sign-in sheet for constituents. Will there be a sign-up sheet for those who wish to ask questions? Or will individuals raise their hands to be called on? You may also be able to introduce yourself to the elected official or staff person before the event begins. Location really is key. Have group members sit in different areas of the room as close to the front as possible to maximize your impact. Are there microphones for questioners already in place? If so, get seats near the mic so you can be first in line. Try to sit near the front and near the aisle so it's easy for staff running the microphones to get to you. Designate a recorder. This person can record responses on their phone using a simple voice memo, and try to do this subtly and prioritize a good interaction with an elected official over a good recording. And make sure to raise your hand first, fast, and high. This means raise your hand immediately when it's time to ask questions and keep it up there. Try to get a moment with the elected official after the event. This is a great chance to ask a question or follow up on an answer. And stay polite, respectful, and assertive. Identify yourself as a volunteer with American Promise and begin with a brief thank you or acknowledgement. Don't embarrass the member of Congress. If he or she can't give you a direct reply, let the member know that you'll be arranging an opportunity for further discussion. Oftentimes, members simply want their staff to review legislation so that there are no surprises. Polite follow-up shows that you're a dedicated and active member of the community, someone they actually want a relationship with. Seek out the media after the event to talk about our issue. This is a great way to start building long-term relationships with local media. Seek out an elected official staff. introduce yourself and your issue, and provide them with your contact info and any supporting materials you brought with you. Leave the event with a clear plan to follow up with their staff, and do it. Within a few days, fax or email a letter to the member of Congress and the staff person, and mention that you were at the event and recap your question or request. If you weren't able to ask your question, send a follow-up letter letting them know that you were there, and contact the appropriate legislative staff to present your issue. Share information you learned from gathering with your group and with American Promise staff. Let us know what happened, how'd it go, and what can we learn about the member for the future. And last to you guys, thanks for bearing with me. Remember, we're betting the farm on these relationships. And remember that persistence pays off. We'll send these tips out on Monday, but I'd like to ask anyone if they have any questions about how to be most effective during a town hall. Brian, does anyone have their hand raised for this?
Just a reminder to press 1 if you want to ask a question on this.
Yep, so if you've got any questions on how to be effective during a town hall, or maybe someone wasn't able to share their experience during a town hall they actually went to, please press 1. It looks like we've got a couple hands. Brian, who's raising their hand?
So we have Susan Cohen.
All right,
Hi.
Susan, where are you calling from?
Yeah, from Piermont, New York again.
Okay.
Just speak from your heart. That's it. That's the main, as far as I'm concerned. Because it's heart to heart, shoulder to shoulder, we get things done together. So that's all I got to say.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. That's important advice. Brian, does anyone else have their hand raised?
Yep. We have Bernadine Green.
All right, Bernadine, where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Morris County, New Jersey. And it wasn't about the town hall meetings, but I did want to ask you guys, since I wanted to share this and I didn't get the email out in time, is there any way that you have a replay of this call with the information?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. On Monday, we will upload the recording of this call to our YouTube channel, which has the recordings of all of our past monthly calls. And if you go to YouTube and you can just type in American Promise conference calls in the search bar, and you'll see our channel pop up. And this recording will be up there Monday.
Oh, great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thank you. Brian, I think we've got time for 1 or 2 more questions. Does anyone have their hand raised?
Yep. We have John Pudner has raised his hand.
Great. John, where are you calling in from?
Mobile, Alabama, and so I was moving kids into college, so I've been in and out. But one tip from last night, I did run into Congressman Rogers at an event. It wasn't a town hall. I had a good conversation. And just one tip, if you can think of a couple of things you want to write on a business card, if you actually get to talk to the member, their staff generally makes them empty all the business cards and goes through them. So I wrote like one bill number and just a couple tidbits. They're just much more likely to look at that than a big form I found. And, we talked for a good 10 minutes and connect on some things. But he at the end even said, now is that bill number and that other thing on the card you gave me? Yes, sir, it is. So just a little tidbit there that might get back to staff with a little reinforcement from the member.
Great. Thanks so much, John, and thanks for being here with us today.
Sure. Thanks.
Brian, does anyone else have their hand raised?
Yeah, we have one more. I'm just going to their name in the list. We have Alice Angel again.
All right, Alice, where are you calling in from?
Vail, North Carolina, but actually it's my husband who's also on the line that has the comment or question.
Hi, it's Granville Angel. I just wanted to add that, there's so much contention. We're watching this thing with the Charlottesville and all that. We live in the Deep South, Lincoln, North Carolina area, and this is where we're going to go to the town hall. We've been to a number of them. One thing I found out, since we're so progressive and all that, I put on my Vietnam veterans hat with the insignia and everything. I think a person could similarly put on any kind of little patriotic insignia, American flag or something, and let them know we're patriots too, and we're for this country, and we're for all of the country and everybody. And it tends to showing up like this with something graphic tends to make people a little less aggressive and hostile toward what we have to say. I know they tend to not launch out against a veteran verbally. Unfortunately, Alice got booed the last time right after me, but I might try to find something she can pin on her coat or something. But I think being assertive, keeping our energy really positive and loving, and having something graphic we can wear that shows that we're dedicated citizens and not some, like they want to put us in some kind of a negative anti-American position. It's a good thing to do.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think you're, getting to an important point that standing up to concentrated power, fighting for personal sovereignty, those are very much central to the type of, policy reform which we're pushing. And it is American. It is patriotic to be engaging in your community. We're citizens. We're not consumers. And at the heart of our citizenship is the responsibility to participate in the democratic process. And I think if you've got something visual, like you said, to demonstrate that, even better. Brian, I think we've got time for one, maybe two more. And before we do that, I'd just like to rewind for maybe 2 minutes and point out that John, who called 2 questions ago, John Pudner, is a member of our advisory council and has been doing great work on behalf of getting money out of politics. And I'd encourage everyone to check it out and you can go to takebackourrepublic.org. I just wanted to point that out before we move on to the next question. Brian, does somebody have their hand up?
Yep, let's go with Steve.
All right, Steve, where are you calling in from?
From Cleveland, Ohio.
Great.
I'm calling. I wanted to know if, because there are multiple amendments, if there are certain, you specifically mentioned what the Democracy for All amendment, if there were other ones that people encouraged, or if there are some people, it's sort of like representatives co-sponsored one but not another.
Yeah, that's a good question, and you're absolutely right that there are multiple amendments that are calling for this 28th Amendment. I'd encourage everybody to familiarize themselves with unitedforthepeople.org, United for the number 4, thepeople.org. It's a great resource where you can see all of the existing amendments which have been proposed. You can see the full text, and as you mentioned, the list of co-sponsors, which aren't always the same list. There's a little bit of variation from amendment to amendment. And correct me if I'm wrong, but your question is, why have some people co-sponsored some amendments but not the others, and why is there not full cohesion on this? And that's a very good and important question. Each amendment is approaching this problem slightly differently. The language is different, and there's an active debate going on currently, among congressional leaders, among legal scholars, as to what specifically this 28th Amendment should say to have the largest impact. And at American Promise, we're launching the Writing the 28th Amendment project to really do just this, to get everybody on the same exact page, hear from people, with differing views on this issue, bring them together to come up with some consensus language, because I think your question gets to the important point that we're going to be a lot more effective if we're all fighting the same fight in an even more focused way. So I just want to thank you for that great question. And I think that's a good one to end on here. Before we hop off, I just want to review the next steps and how to get more involved with American Promise. So I'd encourage everyone to start an American Promise Association in your community by filling out and returning the short form I'll be sending each of you by email on Monday. On the forum, you can let us know how you want to get more involved, and you could also just email me again at azorc@americanpromise.net, AZORC as in cat, at americanpromise.net, to let me know you'd like a call on how to get more involved. And feel free to stay after the call right now and use the August action sheet to write your U.S. senators, asking them to co-sponsor SJ Res 8, the Democracy for All Amendment. If your senator is already a co-sponsor, partner with them to ask them to partner to help bring a Republican on board. And lastly, have a fantastic, enormous impact at your member of Congress's August recess. I'll be sending an email on Monday that will outline these steps in more detail with helpful links to get you in action. And there will also be an RSVP link on the next call scheduled for Saturday, September 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, with the recording of today's call as well. And I'd like to end today's call with a brief quote from Alex Steffen. Quote, "Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve these problems." Let me quickly repeat that. Optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with the large population of people who think nothing is going to get any better. In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist that we can solve those problems. Thank you all for looking at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face, like getting rid of money's corrupting political influence and the challenge of reclaiming our democracy, and still insisting that we can solve them. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to you all next month, and thank you so much for being here. And I just want to rehash one thing that really stuck out to me from Ben Cohen earlier, where he said, "We are the people that we've been waiting for." I liked that quote. It rang true, really hit home. And I just want to thank you all again for being here. We'll end 2 minutes early. Thanks, guys.
2 minutes. Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank